Now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Everywhere.
Can you hear me now?
Everywhere. Everywhere.
Good.
Yes, right from your Android or iPhone. Download the Radio Cayman app now on your Android or iOS phone.
The Radio Cayman app
is where you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere you go.
Everywhere we go, we go. Everywhere we go, we go.
Find it in the Google Store, the Apple Store, or use the link at www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Yes, now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here on another edition of Talk Today. Another wonderful Wednesday as we invite you to be a part of what's all going to happen. Want to know more? Well, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email Talk Today at candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Got a wonderful schedule in store for us today as we invite you to be a part of the discussion. The first discussion, we're going to have a chance to talk about the mandatory vaccines for work permit holders and others, and the Chief Officer in the responsible ministry, Mr. Wesley Howell, will be your guest. There's a song we sing, "Be Your Guest, Be Your Guest." Was that the one that we see at some of the theme parks? Well, as Mr. Howell gets seated and assembled, we invite his presence into our studio. He does not come bearing gifts, but an intellect nonetheless that imbues much discussion. 1:30, Honorable Minister for the new Minister of Investment, Innovation and Development, Dwayne Ebanks, joins us with some of his team members. But always glad to have this unfettered access, it seems like, to our top echelons within our civil service that bring much and certainly reminds us of the great service that it is. As you welcoming to you, Mr. Howell.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here to talk about the matters at hand.
Thank you, sir. And if I may, just let our listeners know, Mr. Howell was scheduled for 12:30, but like so many, we respect time, and he was here. He said, "Why not? Let me sit in."
If you're on time, sometimes people say you're late, so I try to be a couple minutes early.
Yeah, well, no, hey, I used to work with someone, and he would had this thing with he would tap his lips, even when you were earlier than early. I believe he grew up in a place where must have been one of the Dickensian novels where he saw no sunshine and had no joy. But that's a different era. But you're always a man of a great smile and pride, so welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are indeed living in an interesting time in human history, and I figure in another 100 years we'll be seated hopefully in these rare tree, knocking at 6 quick time, and you can talk about this and reminisce as our children and their children running about the place, huh?
No, absolutely. When my dad was alive, I did try to pick his brain to see if he remembered anything about the Spanish flu, because he was actually alive during that pandemic. So he actually lived in 2 pandemics, but he was too young of a young man, of a little boy, to remember what that did to his life at that point in time. But it's interesting. Maybe in 100 years, if someone stick around, some of the really younger ones now, they'll be able to talk about what we're doing now.
That is the thing, and I appreciate that, and I certainly don't want to put us off of our topic, but we keep seeing through history things are written in a perspective that skews the narrative to favor the writer or the particular mindset. With the greatest of deference, it probably has happened with religious texts. It probably happens with financial dealings, political, personal, and otherwise. The truth and honesty is probably that virus that should be, present, but it's always seemingly absent.
Maybe the secret there is that more of us need to write our own views of what's going on to cement it down.
Yeah, strangely enough that you said that. So as we get into exercise, I had, at the invitation of some, what I think was a great honor, to ask a group of students just recently if they remember something. They all did. And I said, 3 paragraphs, 5 lines each max, just quickly, don't go over a page. Can each you jot down whatever form you want to do, sentences, bullet points, if you want to draw, it doesn't matter, what you recall of this thing. There were 13 students, right? One of whom said, don't wish to participate. Fair enough. So a baker's dozen. And that one of those students had 3 different contexts within that page of what she thought she remembered. Yeah. This is what she thought, but this is what one parent said that she remembers hearing, and this is something else. And this was not long ago.
No, so any of us that have done sort of the team building exercise of the Chinese whispers know that our oral history is at risk of interpretation from one person to the next, and that's within sort of a half an hour segment. Can you imagine over the years? So it's all very interesting. Well, interesting bits. So it's one of the reasons I'm here to speak from the source in relation to what's contained in the bills that are now out for public consultation that are in train to be debated in the House of Parliament on Monday, the 4th of October.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting. Then we see citizens starting to have discussions as to what the impact is and potential could be even before there's a discussion in the House of Parliament. So the legislation is now out. We know that under the Constitution it was exercised to have a reduced consultation period. So people need to at least be cognizant that it's there to know if they wish to participate. But I looked at the proposed, still called a bill?
It is a bill, yes.
Is it a bill? I was looking for the check, but it's going to cost us. No, actually. And some very salient points. And there are many who have discussions, not so much esoteric as it is academic, as it is potential and profound, but it is the proposed legislation.
So first off, I'll say that the bill is available for public consultation. It's available on the Gazette's website. We've also pushed out a couple of media releases in relation to that. As with all bills, individuals who wish to give feedback to the parliamentarians who are going to be debating this are encouraged to contact their individual member of parliament and have those views shared there. We've also set up a email address that's bclpolicy@gov.ky. The email address is live. We've received a number of submissions, the first one coming in on Sunday. So we know that it's working and we're getting those. So those are all being acknowledged and the feedback is being compiled. So folks are offering their views on, and in some cases, suggestions on the bills. And we'll compile all those for the minister responsible, who's the deputy premier. He would be the one bringing the motion on those bills to the House for debate. So.
And because of the legislation, I mean, it's sort of, well, I guess we'll be under the ambit of border control as opposed to labor, but it overlaps.
This is mainly, well, in effect, it's all immigration legislation. So the vaccine mandate is for persons who are under immigration control. But as you know, we no longer have a unified Department of Immigration. So border control, which has the responsibility for the borders and landing and entry, persons on student visa, and all those are dealt with under the Border Control Act. We have that piece. So there's one bill that amends that, or proposes to amend that piece of legislation, and then there's another bill that seeks to amend the Immigration Transition Act, and that bill then covers work permit, permanent residency applications. Again, those are a number of persons who are under immigration control, but in a different piece of legislation.
Right.
The provisions are essentially mirrored, so it's the same requirement. The requirements come from the Public Health Act and through their regulations. So there's nothing, sort of the approved vaccine courses, all those things are set out in the public health regulations, and these bills then reference those as having to comply with those regs. But so long answer, it is persons under immigration control, so by definition does not cover Caymanians who are not under immigration control. Yeah.
Okay, and I really appreciate you being not just so insightful, but almost exhaustive in that. And we realize the importance of the public health legislation. But for those who may not necessarily be as assured of what it is, are we talking about, list us, work permit holders, PR, tell us exactly who is affected, whether it's existing or new.
So no existing. The requirements are applied or come into effect once commenced. So this is assuming that it passes daily, the governor assents, it becomes an act, and then there's a commencement date for that. So at that commencement date, any applications that are received for renewal or new applications would be subject to complying with these provisions. So somebody in a multi-year work permit, for example. So in some cases, caregivers and helpers, domestic helpers, are granted sort of a 3-year work permit. So there's an anniversary fee that is paid on the 12-month anniversary of the grant date. That's not a new facility. It's essentially one that has multiple payment terms, but it's one that's valid. So it wouldn't. Right. These provisions, once they become law, assuming they become law, would not kick in on unless there was a renewal facility requested of that individual, as it would be for a brand new application.
Right. So new applications or renewal. So just, and I don't wish in any way to belabor it, but just to be, because we've received a number of questions.
Yeah.
I think just people just confused with how legislation is written.
So as is drafted here, there is no transitionary clauses that would cause the legislation to be retrospective to
no retroactive legislation.
No,
right.
No.
Okay, there's been some discussions about over the years whether that's a different topic. So that person,
absolutely,
to the example you just gave, the person who just received an application, let's say 3 years, 5 years, and they have to pay that fee every year. At the end of that 3 or 5 year period, whatever it is, if they choose to remain and they put in an application to remain in Cayman, at that point, if the legislation has been enacted, at that point, if it's not has no amendments to it, would then be required for the vaccine.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then for
even though on some of those payment anniversaries, there could be a question as to whether or not you need to repeat your medical for
but it would not require the mandated injection. Yeah. And it's for work permit holders, permanent residency.
Yeah, persons on student visas. So those are the folks covered by the Border Control, Customs and Border Control Act, the global citizen aspect. So those are those bits. Cabinet permits as well as non-Caymanian children and dependents of Caymanians.
Any and everyone that was subject to some level of immigration control.
Yeah. So if a non-Caymanian acquires the right to be Caymanian and they have children that aren't with them, and those children aren't a part of that grant when that's given, so the children are not Caymanian, and they want to come to the Cayman Islands, they would have to go through Customs and Border Control and be subject to those bits. So cabinet permits, non-Caymanian child, dependents of non-Caymanian student visas are the ones that are enshrined in the Customs and Border Control bit.
Okay. And before we go to the break, just to absolute clarity, example, a person who is a permanent resident, been here, has, and would be potential in the process this year, next year, applying for citizenship status.
It doesn't apply for Cayman status application, so it's a permanent resident application.
Right.
So
once they have PR,
that
person, whether they would not be subject to this.
And I hasten to clarify, I mentioned non-Caymanian children and dependents, only those that are vaccine eligible. So if you're below the age of
12, okay.
Yeah, 12, because it's 12 and above. Yeah. If you're below the age of 12, then you would not be vaccine eligible, so there would be no requirement to subscribe to the vaccine mandate, because we can't mandate something that you're not eligible to receive. Right? Okay. So again, going back to the fact that this dovetails with the public health regulations, it doesn't replace it. It actually is an extension of the public health regulations. Okay, well, we'll take the break when we come back. And I appreciate you sharing with us, and maybe sometimes we'll deliberately ask for repetition, only for clarity and aid and edification. But as we speak into the Chief Officer and the Minister of Border Control and Labour, Mr. Wesley Howell, we talk about the proposed act before Parliament come Monday the 4th of October relative to mandated vaccines. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Water Authority Cayman wishes to advise its valued customers and the motoring public of planned works to upgrade the water supply infrastructure along Palmdale Avenue, Success Circle, Nevard Close and Damascus Close. Preliminary work will begin the week of 6th September. Work will take place weekdays between 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The project will last for approximately 12 to 15 weeks. During the course of the works, traffic management measures will be in place, with signs directing the traffic flow. Motorists are encouraged to drive with caution when they are in the area to protect their safety and the safety of the Water Authority's staff. Customers in the area may experience service outages throughout the work. The authority will make every effort to give advanced notice related to outages. Customers can visit our website www.waterauthority.ky for outage notices. The Water Authority appreciates the patience and understanding of its customers and the public as it undertakes these works and apologizes for any inconvenience this may cause.
The Department of Commerce and Investment is asking clients to use their online services at www.dci.gov.ky for trade and business amendments, grant and renewal applications, and more. While the DCI counters remain open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, you can stay safe, avoid the line, and save time by applying online for business services at dci.gov.ky. For questions about the DCI's online service or other licensing, enforcement, or regulatory matters, please email info@dci.gov.ky.
We think it's time you crossed over to a new vehicle. And with the 2021 Toyota Corolla Cross now at Vant Motors, you have plenty of reasons to make the switch. The crossover body and hybrid engine is a sleek design in a sturdy structure with a spacious interior that opens to extensive cargo space. Stuck in traffic? The high-performance self-charging hybrid system automatically switches between gas and electric vehicle mode, helping you lower both fuel costs and carbon emissions. The Corolla Cross has full LED lighting inside and out, an integrated display audio system with energy monitor, and a dual-zone climate control system to ensure comfort for all. Test drive the new 2021 Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid today at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
Stay tuned.
Don't forget to tune in Monday through Friday for Radio Cayman's local evening sports report during the 6 p.m. news hour.
Taking a look at Radio Cayman's local sports, I'm Dion Anglin.
It is proudly brought to you by King Sports Center, providing your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And thanks to Mr. Wesley Howell, the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Border Control and Labour, as we talk about impending legislation being placed before the House of Parliament on Monday. Immigration or transition. The word transition these days, I'm careful how to use that, you know. I felt like transition is a new job. I thought, okay.
Yes, Immigration Transition Act 2021 revision is the substantive piece of legislation that's being amended by the Immigration Transition Amendment Bill, which is a mouthful. 2021, I wasn't even finished with the full title. Yeah. And then the other bit is the Customs and Border Control Amendment Bill, which amends the Customs and Border Control Act.
Yeah. Something I was going to consider asking, but I think I may just in passing and you decide. Because we reference in often the public health aspect of public health legislation without fully appreciating the extent and the powers and sort of obligations that are within the provisions of legislation.
Yeah.
They're very significant.
So on Monday morning, Dr. Lee was here with me on Mr. Connor's show, and we were off mic, and I said, during the course of last year when we were doing our work on curfews and the like, I took the opportunity to read the Public Health Act in its entirety and then read through some of the regulations, and I hadn't fully appreciated that the public health legislation, and I use the word powerful and not, was up there with the Emergency Powers Act.
It's significant.
Because public health and a pandemic such as this has that effect of reaching so many members of our community and the duration. So, as terrible as Ivan was, it was a short duration that took us years to recover from. Some people recovered faster than others. But the pandemic is still raging, from sort of March 2020 when we closed our borders through now, affecting far reaches of our economy and not just ours, but around the world. So really unprecedented. So the legislation really has to be able to deal with that level of not just hazard, but risk and impact and duration. Hence why that legislation is there. So again, circling back, that the provisions in the bills that are before the public now for consultation don't exceed any of the provisions within the public health. It's actually taking the public health as a basis and having those bits sort of enshrined in that primary legislation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you acknowledge reading the legislation. I think that's something not enough of us do. And I say that carefully because even me, sometimes when I read it, I have to go back and go, oh, wait. It's just the way it's written that is off-putting for some. And I don't know about anybody else, but you read sometimes, you need to read it a couple of times to really get the gist of it and then read it to really understand it. But that bit of legislation, the word you use is powerful. I've heard some others use far-reaching and different words, but it's significant. It's not just the legislation within the Cayman context, it's the UK and other places. As a passing comment, I wonder to what extent within the sitting next week will our parliamentarians take a look at that legislation and propose any, even though it's not there, consideration to possible amendments, because the powers that are vested in that relative to freedoms, relative to what can and can't be done, is significant.
And I would argue probably not unnecessarily so as well, because of the hazard and the risk and the impact.
I would disagree.
And the duration, right? But yeah, I'm not aware of anything. The last amendment that I was aware of was the bit that was done to modify the penalties in relation to years imprisonment and the fines.
But even to that has far-reaching consequences, because the penalties are significant should a breach occur, breach of the legislation not. And you before the courts and you sanction to the courts. The courts have significant powers per the legislation,
absolutely,
to sanction you.
But again, we go back to impact and risk. One person, one individual who is knowingly breaching and putting other persons at risk of a communicable disease can shut down schools, can shut down businesses. So there's not very many other things that you could do that could take out that many people for that length of time, with those types of actions. So
other than the tongue and libel.
But public health is not here, so I don't want to debate their legislation.
We'll invite that another time.
Yeah, wanted to focus back on some of the key provisions in the legislation. So early in the drafting, we recognized that the source market for some of our labor pools are countries whose access to the vaccine isn't like ours. So they're individuals who would gladly take the vaccine in their home countries but aren't there yet because of availability. So there is a provision in the legislation for new applications that those persons would comply. They would give an undertaking to complete the approved course of vaccinations within 4 weeks of arrival on island. So the idea there is that the individuals would have their first dose while in quarantine for the 14 days. Then at the 21-day bit, they would be then eligible for the second dose, and then there's a week's sort of grace in there. So that provision is in there, which is a sort of recognition of the reality of our of the folks, the Philippines, Jamaica, Honduras, where some of our workforce comes in from, that vaccines aren't eligible, are not available freely there.
And accessibility may not be as easy as it is being made available here.
Yes.
You referenced the approved course. So far, there's only one particular one that is there.
Actually, I hasten to add, without public health here, that there are a range of vaccines that have been approved. I remember the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is not an mRNA vaccine, it's a viral vector vaccine, was here some while ago. And most of the folks, my understanding, that took that up were individuals who had their first dose of AstraZeneca in the UK in particular, and then had their second dose here. Dr. Lee undertook to source additional doses of the AstraZeneca for those persons who want a choice of technology and vaccine. But again, don't ask me too much on the public health side. I'm only playing back what I heard six feet away from Dr. Lee on Monday morning.
I think we measured it was 6 feet 3.25 inches. No, but and that was the thing, because you said approved course and what was available here. So once that is something that is approved for then that would suffice.
And there is medical guidance on, if your vaccine isn't one of the approved, what doses of what takes you up to unapproved level. But like I said, that's a public health specific bit there, and the CMO and the medical officer of health, Dr. Williams and his team, are the ones that would deal with those nuances.
All right. And then what about exemptions? We see corporate legislation giving exemptions to certain things subject. In this instance?
So there are exemptions in both bills. The exemptions are for persons overseas. A physician in their home country can write an exemption detailing why they're not medically able to take the vaccine. That is subject to approval of the medical officer of health.
Not the CMO.
No, Dr. Williams. In effect, and his colleagues. Yes.
Right.
And similarly here, for persons that are already on island who would be applying for a facility, once this kicks in, a local physician can write in that exemption. A medical certificate is what it's called in the draft bill. Again, subject to the acceptance of the same by the medical officer of health.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if that is not accepted, then
there would be vaccine required at that point. Yeah.
Rights of appeal? I didn't see any.
Yeah, judicial review is there for those bits. Yeah.
All right, so the only exemption is in that instance. No other exemption for any other category.
Other than the folks who are not vaccine eligible, so those young kids who are below the age.
So religion, dietary restrictions like vegans in the UK, for instance, that we heard in the media got some exemptions. Long curly hair, green eyes, we don't get exemptions.
There are exemptions that are built in, subject to the medical officer of health approval. Those have to be reported into the cabinet on a regular basis, but not longer than 3 months. So they are where the law is, or the bill at this point is drafted to be fairly prescriptive. There are some aspects where there can be some judgment applied, but again, that's in keeping with all the other provisions. So,
okay, we do have a caller on the line, Mr. Hall. That's what's up to us. We'll go see where it takes us. Hey, good afternoon, welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and good afternoon to your good guest.
Hey, good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
I'm fine.
Good to hear from you, sir.
Good afternoon to Mr. Howell.
Good afternoon, sir.
First, the situation of this corona in the island really is concerning. And, the other day I see a post on Facebook that in the airport in the Philippines, they return one lady, she worked in the Kimpton hotel. She have the bad stage of corona, which is the Delta. They describe that, they find that in the airport, and they return her not to go in the plane. And how in the world that recently from Jamaica come a lady and we find out that she have corona in Cayman here in the plane? How the authorities in Jamaica did let her in the plane, while should be there is examination of before you leave any country in the world. That's the requirement. Should be vaccinated, should be tested in the airport. There is ways and there is efficient. So how some of those countries I start here that the what you call it, the corona test being sold by money to some people from some countries. They don't do the test, they don't do the vaccination, and they come here as they are vaccinated. Excuse me, and they are vaccinated. There is countries the disease spread, especially Honduras, Jamaica, Colombia. Those countries we should have more restrictions, to put more restriction in those countries. People need to, when they need to come here, they need to come in a way.
All right. Thanks very much. No, Mr. Howell, I guess the substantive question is in cases of breaches. Well, as the caller was speaking and asking that question, if you wish to respond. Anyway.
Yeah, so I can't comment on the specifics of that particular case. I know the matters are under investigation, and the CEO of Cayman Airways had committed to putting in place some mitigations to prevent future cases of such occurring. But I can say, notwithstanding the provisions in existing bills, the penalties for providing false information in relation to vaccinations or medical certificates carries the same penalties as the Public Health Act and regulations. So it's $10,000 or 2 years. So where an offense under these other acts may have attracted a smaller penalty and less jail time, they mirror the public health bit. So it is quite a substantial fine, and the potential of 2 years of custodial sentence is quite heavy. But that's in relation to breaching these aspects of the bills in relation to any of the documentation or otherwise, yeah?
And this is where I think as the public perhaps discusses this legislation, they look at, to me, the substantive part under the public health, because there are two others to dovetail. One doesn't just exist in a vacuum. The House of Parliament will meet on Monday, and the parliamentarians will make their decisions and their comments. But for us now as the public, we still have opportunity to comment.
Provide feedback on the documentation that's been provided, the two bills that are out there. Again, for the listeners that joined us since the beginning, would encourage anybody that has feedback, either in support or in opposition, or just recommendations on amendments to the bill, to have those discussions with their member of parliament initially, if they choose to go that route. We've also set up a email address, BCL, that's Border Control and Labour, bclpolicy@gov.ky. And we know the email address is valid. We've been receiving feedback from Sunday on the weekend, and some questions as well for clarification on matters. And we encourage individuals to make their views known so that those can be addressed by the parliamentarians when they go forward to debate the bills on Monday.
And as you shared at the outset, this, if enacted, would affect every person who would be subject to immigration control, under the or above the age of 12, I guess. Once they're
vaccine eligible. Yes,
yeah, that's the word that we use. So whether it's a student visa or work permit or PR renewal, or even the global citizen programs. Now we got a quick email earlier. I guess I say it's not an email, WhatsApp. You referenced cabinet permits. I apologize to the listener. I assume everybody understands the terminology. Would you explain on that slightly?
So cabinet permits are provision within the Customs and Border Control Act, where cabinet can, under certain circumstances, at their discretion, grant persons the right to remain in the islands under whatever term that they decide as cabinet. So it's not a grant of status. It's sort of a grant, a permit to reside on the islands for a period of time, and subject to whatever cabinet applies at that point.
Whatever conditions are.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue the discussion after our news break with the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Border Control and Labour, Mr. Wesley Howell. We're talking about legislation that goes before the House of Parliament on Monday relative to mandating vaccines as part of the subject to those on the immigration control. Mr. Howell, you've always been gracious in setting out the technical aspects of it, so we appreciate that discussion. When we come back, maybe you can give us some more insight. For those who are listening, if you have a question, you just want clarification, well, the phone lines are available. Recognizing we're just speaking to the technical aspects. So stay tuned to Talk Today.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
To those affected by a hurricane, the damage is far greater than the eye can see. It's the helplessness and uncertainty you feel when you have no electricity or running water. It's the pain of experiencing damage to your home. But there are people right here that can help. We're CG Britke. We're your neighbors. We live here and work here too. We're always ready to answer calls and to process your claims as quickly as possible. So when a storm turns your life upside down, we're here to turn it around. CG Britke. Good like that.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office. Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
We are island people. We know that hurricane season means preparation now, ahead of time, being ready ahead of the fury of nature we cannot control. Preparation that can make the difference between life and death, injury and safety, the misery of loss, the regret of procrastination. Know this now. Hurricane safety begins with you. It's your responsibility and mine. Your medicine, your valuable documents, your water, your place of safety during the storm. Your preparation now will directly determine your outcome during and after the storm. Prepare now. A message from Rotary Central. We serve to change lives.
We all risk getting COVID-19 and spreading it to others, maybe without even realizing that we are sick. So, if you plan on visiting or going out with friends or family, remember these tips to keep you and your loved ones safe. Wash your hands regularly. Cover your coughs and sneezes. Maintain a safe social distance from other people. Avoid handshakes, hugs, and kisses with people that you don't live with. Contact the flu hotline if you have a cold or flu-like symptoms. Let's keep working together to prevent the spread of coronavirus.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Bracken, Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Prospect Primary School is closed today after a Year 6 student test positive for COVID-19. Primary contacts of the child, including classmates and teachers who have had prolonged interaction with the class, are being quarantined, just one of the measures taken as part of the school's COVID-19 response. Public Health was called in to conduct testing. No word yet on how long the school will be closed or how widespread the outbreak is. This follows the Georgetown primary outbreak, which has been closed with numerous families quarantined after 21 children and adults tested positive for COVID. Turning to international news now, more than 100 U.S. citizens and green card holders and 9 special immigrant visa holders were evacuated from Afghanistan via a private charter flight on Tuesday, according to 2 organizations involved in the effort. Project Dynamo and Human First Coalition said in a press release that the group of evacuees were moved overland, COVID-tested, MMR vaccinated, securely housed and evacuated to safety the afternoon of September 28th. Among the passengers evacuated from Kabul were 59 children under the age of 18 and 16 under age 3, according to the groups. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison is facing calls at home to increase commitments to slashing greenhouse gas emissions after the country's most populous state on Wednesday announced goals nearly twice as ambitious as his government's. New South Wales, which includes the country's biggest city of Sydney, will now seek to halve emissions by 2030 compared with 2005 levels. Its previous commitment was 35%. The announcement was made by NWS Premier Gladys Berejiklian, who is from the same Liberal Party as Morrison. And the ivory-billed woodpecker is among 23 species declared extinct by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The service has proposed removing them from the Endangered Species Act, which protects species under the threat. In all, 11 birds, 1 bat, 2 fish, 1 plant, and 8 types of mussel have been declared extinct. The service said it had made the determination based on, quote, rigorous reviews of the best available science for each of the species. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And in a half hour or so, with the good company of the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Border Control and Labour, Mr. Wesley Howell. It's a program in note. Honourable Minister Andre Ebanks will join us 1:30 on another topic. But hey, it's a Wednesday. Let's be kind to Government Day. No, I'm just kidding. I find I use I attempt at humour in a way to deflect, but also to bring a little bit of joy to life and maybe be a bit defensive at times. But this is serious and unprecedented times for many, Mr. Howell. And our parliamentarians, I think, are called to do much these days. So as a country, if people don't mind me, let's keep them in prayer for not just their protection, but for their wisdom and counsel. And they do the right thing always, And
it's not easy. Where I sit, folks recognize me as someone that is offering technical advice and working through some of these issues. So I get, both sides and the stuff in the middle as well. So I have individuals that send me their personal views on why they're not getting vaccinated and why they've made that choice for their families. On the flip side, I have a number of individuals who are reaching out to me saying, can you please tell me how soon and when and where I can go and get my booster shot? Because, I was in and I got vaccinated back in, January, February. Now I'm wanting to have my booster in advance of any more cases in the community or any reopening. So, and the folks in the middle who, by the numbers, are being vaccinated. I mean, Cayman is the Cayman Islands, and make sure the Cayman backers understand that I'm inclusive.
Even West Bay as well.
The Cayman Islands are near the top of worldwide vaccination rates for COVID-19. And that's one of the key aspects of this legislation as well, is that knowing that there's a significant portion of our population that is transient workers on work permits and other things, that we don't dilute our vaccination population by bringing in persons to live and work among us who are not vaccinated, and therefore derail some of that hard work and effort that has gone in as well. So hence the legislation and one of the driving forces behind shortening the public consultation so that the effect of the legislation can be had sooner, to capture more of the incoming labor force, be that helpers for homes or caregivers.
There was something that I won't expect an answer now, but I'm sort of preparing for the discussion. It's just sort of how maybe my mind would work at times, right? We're looking at statistics, so we know the data that's available, how many people on work permit. We have a semblance of what our population is like. And I was trying to determine, I see you have some stats to All right, share with us.
No. So anecdotally, again, this is from me moving around and just paying attention. There's a number of companies whose ads, even on this radio station, are saying that, our people are 100% vaccinated. Yesterday was my wife's birthday, and I left a meeting very much after 6 o'clock last night and scrambled to order dinner for birthday celebrations, and the establishment that I went to do the takeout, proudly on their door was, our staff members are 100% vaccinated for your safety. So anecdotally, I believe, and this is me speaking not from a public health perspective, that individuals from other countries whose families are in dire straits from the effects of COVID, either health-wise, God forbid, fatalities, and those who are not able to get vaccinated, took advantage of vaccinations here in their numbers because they understand from their own personal circumstances what that does for them and their families by extension. So again, the legislation as drafted, I think, will help to bolster that number and ensure that it isn't diluted by workforce replacements that would come in where there aren't Caymanians available. I hasten to add that would be unvaccinated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is it. And then, as we look at potentially what could transpire down the line, I know you recognize, as you shared then, that the numbers come into work and live. If that's a high percentage, then that could impact the statistical number of that. Do we have any sort of indication of what potential work permit numbers would look like, new applications next year, next quarter?
We have some forecast. It is very in the air depending on what happens to the economy. We know that there's a number, 3,000, 4,000 Caymanians who were displaced from tourism. A large part of those worked with cruise tourism. So even with the current reopening plans, that's on air arrivals, not cruise arrivals. So it's hard to say. There's some aspects of the economy that are booming. Financial services are up there. So the qualified individuals for audit and other purposes, for compliance and other things, those are areas where Cayman employment is solid, and they still have a requirement for additional labor beyond what our market can supply. Construction is another area where if you look at the number of tower cranes around and the shortage of cement and other things, that's an industry that is seriously under significant pressure from the building demand. So those are some areas that are there, but we've been sort of holding steady on the numbers because it's sort of hard to forecast what the effects of that would be. Some aspects of our economy, as the Deputy Premier shared in his overall view of government finances, the government revenue, which is consumption-based, is far ahead of what the budget position thought we would be at this point. So it remains to be seen how that plays out.
Yes.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yep. Cayman has always been an interesting economy. It didn't follow any rules, man. It made its own and broke many.
But yeah, so that's that aspect there. So it's hard to say, but we have an aging population and persons needing care for their elderly persons. In some cases, when persons are unwell or quite advanced in age, that becomes a 24-hour operation. So one family may employ 2, if not 3 caregivers, just to make sure that their loved ones are cared for. So historically, we've always had sort of 5,000-ish persons in domestic help or caregiver category. So that's a significant part of our population. And there's some views that some individuals want to ensure that the persons working with their most vulnerable are totally vaccinated as well and offer that bubble of protection, particularly for older persons that the families may have some hesitantly about giving the vaccine to, a 100-year-old person or thereabouts. In which case, I would say the advice is go talk to your family physician and take your advice from there. But that is one of the things. And there are other persons that don't like the provisions, but we'll pass those views on to the policymakers, and they'll take those forward as they debate.
Indeed. We do have a call online, Mr. Howell. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome, good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
All right.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Not bad in yourself.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing with us this afternoon.
I have a question for Mr. Howell. I guess I'll be the devil's advocate. I have to ask him a question. If he can, because I believe different, but I hope that I'm not. But I have a question. Do he see anything in the pipeline where it will become mandatory for civil servants to take this vaccine?
That was the end of your question. You have more than one, or is that your full question?
And then, I got two more. I'll go get to the next one.
All right. So quickly, I can say that these provisions, so government companies and statutory authorities are subject to work permit requirements. So there's non-Caymanian public servants, so not civil servants, but public servants are subject to these requirements. So if you work for one of the authorities, they require work permits, you would fall into this category. The Deputy Governor has said that he is supportive of moving forward with amendments to the Public Service Management Act and the regulations that would mirror these requirements for non-Caymanian civil servants. So that's within core civil service. So as it stands now, those civil servants that are not Caymanian, who are governed by a government contract, are exempt from work permit, so they're not required to apply for a work permit. So there's a bit of a loophole there in relation to these provisions. So the DG is committed to bringing forward those bits in relation to modifying that, but only as it applies to non-Caymanian civil servants.
Okay, another question. I am concerned because if I'm sure that this mandatory vaccine for work permit holders is not something that we thought would last month or the month before, it was coming. Why didn't the government not put some mandate for those work permit holders, especially the tourism, because there's still a lot of tourism people here, in my opinion, that are work permits that they remain on the island. So if they are here and they remain during the lockdown that we had it, when we knew this law was coming, why didn't we not give them the opportunity to be able to go to? I mean, they gave them the opportunity, yes, to leave. I understand that, but if you're gonna make a law for them now because they're already here, these are not people that come in, these are people that are already here getting renewals. Why they didn't make them know that if you don't leave in this vaccination is going on, this is what's coming. People would have known what they had to do, because you got a lot of people that are not even in the tourism industry that are saying now if they have to take a mandatory vaccination, they're going to leave. I mean, we got them in the professional fields. What happens if they decide that they're going to leave, and where are we going to fill all these people? I mean, you're saying that we don't have enough Caymanians to fill it. I mean, we're going right back now to the 100,000 people that they're trying to make our population, because you're going to get this influx of people that are vaccinated that wants to come in here now. So, where are we sitting?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'll leave you with that.
Okay. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, caller. I can speak to the latter, and in the consultation that we've been having with the professional services, the vast majority are very much in support of this. They have actually implemented their own internal vaccine mandates, as have some of the banks and others. So the government legislation adds another layer to that level.
And as I listen to you, I mean, it's probably a discussion for another time, but seemingly the concerns that many have private companies being able to, as part of its policy, require certain things of its employees, some sharing whether it's part of their contract and the like. But we'll speak to the substantive legislation and let that fall where it does. We have another caller, Mr. Howell.
Okay.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. Good afternoon to Mr. Howell.
Afternoon, sir. How are you today?
I don't understand this thing about this fear of of the numbers, because according to my friend, I have a friend of mine. I tell you, he's such a person that he's just different from most people. According to him, he said it doesn't matter whether it's a zombie. He's from a different country. He said it doesn't matter if it's a zombie or whatever, vampire, and the face changes and all of them. He will talk to all of them. It's not a problem for him.
To the numbers of the population. Yeah.
That is just part of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what he said. And the thing is, he's an ordinary person, really.
Mm-hmm.
But he will walk and talk
to
those who you would never imagine. I'm telling you, look at the kind of person that he is. I'm telling you.
Well, that's the thing. I think we need to have people who look at people for the fact that they're people or not. But do you have any, if you wish, any particular comment or view on the proposed legislation relative to making vaccines mandatory for those people subject to immigration, or you just wish to listen in?
Well, in my opinion, not to specifically speak of that vaccine, but I mean, according to ordinary knowledge, when you catch a cold, you have to take medicine. When you have, for example, you have kidney problems or whatever the case is, you have to be medicated. So I mean, we just don't look at the fear,
Right.
You have the doctors will tell you that you have a right to ask. You can ask questions. I mean, a lot of people know that. It's just simple. It's just knowledge. You don't necessarily have to be that fearful of these things. We don't know the contents of the beer either. We want to take a drink out of the beer, and sometimes it makes you feel a little,
Yeah.
You get a little intoxicated. You feel a little devilish sometimes.
Well. I appreciate what you're sharing, man. You don't know is a matter of trust. And with that, with respect, we'll just quickly pause to take this break in the segment, come back and conclude our discussion with Mr. Howell, and then at 1:30, welcome the Honorable Minister and the new Ministry for, I like how we got a term, man, investment, 3 pillars, innovation and social development. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Aston Shedden Rutty, MBE 1990 to 1977. Aston Rutty was the first child born to Henry Watson Rutty, ISO JP, and Julia Ann Rutty Neelazari at Stake Bay, Cayman Brac. He attended school at Stake Bay and as a young teenager was sent to Jamaica to attend technical training school. On his return, he worked for his father, who was collector of customs for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. He eventually became the Sister Islands' first district commissioner. Mr. Ruddy was married to Ruth Merrin in 1931, and the couple had 4 children. Mr. Ruddy is best remembered for his dedication and diligent work to rebuild the Sister Islands in the aftermath of the 1932 hurricane. He was involved in the construction of roads, the airport, government buildings, and much of the infrastructure of the Sister Islands. He served as an immigration and customs officer, as a judge, and after retiring from government in 1960 as a law agent. The Civic Center on the Bluff was named in his honor. Aston Shedden Rutty.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And thanks again. Thanks to the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Border Control and Labour, Mr. Wesley Howell, for sharing with us the technical aspects of proposed legislation that goes before our House of Parliament on Monday. And we'll let the parliamentarians then have their discussion and any decisions emanating therefrom while we be impacted. But there is an opportunity for the public to at least be aware of the legislation, share the input for or against, or as they wish. Deadline for that would be...
So effectively it's 10 days of public consultation, which is through Sunday. And the debate starts, I think the early normally starts at 10 a.m. on Monday morning, the 4th of October. So folks can reach out to their parliamentarians at any point. In the interim, email us at bclpolicy@gov.ky. So that's bclpolicy@gov.ky. And feed in their views, positive, negative, or in the middle, in relation to the bills. We're compiling those and we'll feed them through to the Deputy Premier as the Minister responsible for the bills, and he will address those as he goes forward in the Parliament.
If I may not hopefully impose too much on your intellect, you've, like many of us, have looked at the legislation, the two proposed bits, and sort of read it. It seems to read like legislation, not terribly bad if you're somewhat comfortable. The wherefores and whereas in subject to paragraph 1, as aforementioned, those are getting limited increasingly, thankfully. But are there, without too much of an imposition, are there any particular points or clauses that...
So I think what bears repeating is that the legislation applies to persons under immigration control. So by definition, no Caymanians are affected by this legislation, other than if they're employers. And we all know that companies otherwise, and those are exempt, have to be at least 6% Caymanian owned. So Caymanian employers seeking overseas labour would have to comply with this in relation to finding persons who either were vaccinated or were willing to commit to completing that course of vaccination within 4 weeks of arrival on island, or grant of a facility under the respective pieces of legislation. So one, it's non-Caymanian in its coverage. It's not retrospective. It applies to applications that are up for renewal or new grants under both of the pieces of legislation. It does have the carve out for individuals who have medical reasons for not being able to be vaccinated. So their medical practitioner, their physician can write those medical certificates are then subject to review and acceptance by the Medical Officer of Health. So that's Dr. Williams and his team. And the vaccination criteria is, as is published elsewhere in the public health regulation. So the list of approved vaccines is there, and it isn't just the Pfizer that we are administering here. As Dr. Lee, who was here with me on Monday morning, shared, even the Cayman Islands did administer some doses of the AstraZeneca. So there's some other ones there. So that's the encompassing bits, and it applies across a range of provisions in the Customs and Border Control Act, dependent, non-Caymanian dependent, and children of Caymanians. A bit of a mouthful there. Persons on student visa, global citizen, persons on cabinet permits. And then on the immigration WRC side of the coin. It's PR applications, substantial business presence, work permits as well. And again, it's on grant or renewal, so not subject to existing facilities that are in place.
Okay, and just for clarity, it does not at present apply to non-Cayman civil servants as yet within the civil service, but
public servants, yes, because public servants, non-Caymanians who work for government companies, statutory authorities are subjected to the work permit requirement.
Right.
So they're subject to the Immigration Transition Act. So that applies to them.
Okay.
And the DG has committed that the
Public Management
Act, which applies to core civil servants, would be mirrored for non-Caymanian civil servants in relation to renewals and new contracts.
Okay. Now, what about Caymanians in the private sector, where their employers have said, listen, going forward, our policy in this company will require all employees to have the vaccine, to be making it mandatory?
Yeah. So I think more general, I'll speak to that. And the learned Mr. Steve McField was on this morning reminding individuals that our Bill of Rights is vertical but not horizontal, in that the Bill of Rights applies to government infringing on rights, but it doesn't apply on individuals infringing on other individuals' rights at that point. So other than a sort of a civil issue or in breach of some other legislation, those employer-employee relationships, if they're not in breach of the labor law, then they would be a part of the conditions of employment, and wouldn't be a breach of a human right under our Constitution, because it doesn't apply to non-government entities in relation to...
It's vertical, not horizontal.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to reference that. I thank you for really a clear answer. I mean, that satisfies some, but many have opined recently in other jurisdictions that contracts can't be just unilaterally amended by the employer. But again, that's more potential a civil issue rather than something under our legislation, relative to human rights and the Bill of Rights.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we got until Sunday to weigh in. BCL policy at gov.ky.
Absolutely.
So Bravo Charlie Lima policy at
gov.ky. Yes.
All right, for those who want to send in their thoughts, and they can liaise directly with their parliamentarians. As a whole, it's interesting legislation, and I thank you for, as you normally do, very intelligently and eloquently helping us to at least move through some of the salient points.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, have a wonderful, blessed, and productive rest of the afternoon and the week, sir.
And you.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right. So, listeners, we'll pause now and take a short break. We'll come back. We got the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Investment, Innovation and Social Development, with two of his illustrious team joining us as we invite you for the next discussion. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office. Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
Had a look at those investment options yet? Too busy. Look at today. Workout, breakfast, take the kids to school, back-to-back meetings, take Pepper to the vet, and she's apparently got allergies now, so... And that was all before 12. But you look relaxed. That's because my money's as busy as you.
With RF, you can access the best in local and international investments to keep your money busy, so you can spend more time focusing on you. Contact us at rfgroup.com to find out more. RF, money at work.
20 years.
Remember when Crew Road had no median and Linford Pearson was only 2 lanes?
We do.
When Dirty Reeds was down the street?
We do.
We have been there for the falls, the growth, and the rise. When your body and mind needed to change, Powerhouse Gym has been here. We've skated with you, your first date, your daughter's first time on skates, your son's first strike. From football to squash, to karate and hockey, to bowling and concerts, and everything in between.
For 20 years,
so much has changed, some for the good and some not so much. Through it all, King Sports Center has been here for you, for Cayman.
King Sports Center, celebrating 20 years as Cayman's home for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. We are a non-for-profit member-centric plan with a democratically elected volunteer board of trustees representing all sectors of the Cayman Islands economy. Chamber Pension has an all-in expense ratio of 0.72% over 16,000 members, $430 million in assets under management. We were the first multi-employer pension plan approved by the regulator in the late 1990s. And today, we are still strong, secure, and are here for employees and employers alike. If you would like to join or request further information, visit chamberpension.ky. And for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
System 1 loaded.
For the record, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings from 7:30 to 9:30, we interview the various government ministers, opposition, and Cayman Island legislators. For the record is brought to you by West Bay Pharmacy at Centennial Towers. Visit us today for fast, efficient, and professional service. Everything you need and the hours you need it at West Bay Pharmacy.
As the community continues to take precautions from COVID-19, it is important to stay prepared for other disasters now that we're in the hurricane season. Here are some post-hurricane safety tips from the Department of Environmental Health. Did you know that you must discard fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, foods in canisters, dented, leaking, or rusting cans after they have come in contact with floodwater? For full guidance on post-hurricane safety tips, visit www.deh.gov.ky.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman 89.9 FM.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thank you so much for joining us as we invite, the Minister for Investment, Innovation, and Social Development in the studio with two of his great team members. To our listening audience, with great deference to you, if you would just draw alongside and maybe invite you to listen initially. We'll hold the calls at the outset just to get some information out on the Minister Andre Ebanks. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks again for coming on board.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the listening public in Cayman and to Caymanians overseas.
There you go. So my cousins in Tampa, Texas, not just kidding, Tijuana. Hey, listen, if you can't laugh at life, you miss it on so much. But this new ministry and the like, it's not just good terminology, investment, innovation, social development. It speaks a lot, but maybe through you we could get some of the vision, we could get into some of the areas and subjects under which the ministry, some of perhaps the aims and objectives. Give us a perspective to understand more, sir.
Well, thank you. Would you like to introduce the panel?
I was going to, my next breath was going to ask if you wanted me to, or if I could respectfully through you ask you to introduce both Miss Cassandra and Miss Stacy, if that's okay.
That's okay.
All right.
I think it's always good to be supported by intelligent policy staff, and I would like them to also introduce themselves to the public.
Okay, thank you. Well, perhaps since Ms. Cassandra has always been, the veteran in the studio, her role at DCFS, we'll defer to her one quick second and ask Ms. Stacy, jump right in as a senior policy advisor in the ministry. Good afternoon to you, Mom.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here. My name is Stacy Cybersma, and I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for one of three within the Ministry of Investment, Innovation, and Social Development under the Honourable Minister. Happy to be here today, and hello to everyone on the road who might be listening right now.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Cassandra.
Good afternoon. My name is Cassandra Farron. I'm the Social Work Manager at Department of Children's Family Services, responsible for the area of elderly services and the residential homes that fall under Department of Children and Family Services. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about the social work services that we provide to older persons, and then of course Older Persons Month, which is kicking off this Friday, the 1st of October.
There you go.
It's bittersweet working with Stacy because I had such a great relationship working with her father when I was in financial services. And now that his daughter's come of age to actually be a senior policy officer, it's great to see her flourish. But at the same time, it makes me realize I'm getting up there.
Well, in case you've forgotten to have a mirror, that's it. No, that's just wisdom, and I think that speaks well, as you shared, to our society, that continuity. As parents, we raise our children, they're educated, they experience, and then they take up the mantle. And as we get into, our golden years, I'm looking forward to when I'm 120. I have a friend, I keep telling her, she needs to be on 70 because I need to draw alongside when she's 120 as well.
Well, we're going to get to that in a moment. So it's an Older Persons Month. We'll be there for you, too, at that time.
There you go. I got my cap out of reserve, man.
So in terms of how the ministry came about, to take a step back to explain to the listening public, the idea was that the subject area of social development, in our view, has not really moved and advanced as much as it perhaps should have in the last decade or so. There has been lots of study, there have been lots of reports, but the idea is to actually put those reports and those recommendations into action. But in order to do that, we thought it was important to couple it with subject areas to give it greater life. And what I mean by that is that if you have a subject area for a ministry that's dedicated towards inward investment of how we're going to expand the veins of the economy, we sort of look at it as a vehicle. The inward investment, appropriately designed with criteria what's fit for purpose in Cayman, is sort of the fuel to the vehicle. Innovation is the engine that's going to channel that fuel to make sure that the vehicle runs smoothly and efficiently. Social development are the passengers that are the beneficiaries that are in the vehicle and aided and supported and benefit from innovation and social development. And so early into the term, we had a strategic retreat. And it was amazing to see how each of the different subject areas, by the end of the 3 days, understood how they fit into the link of the chain and how they feed into each other and why it's important for them to work together. Specifically, when it comes to social development and why we're here today, is to kick off Older Persons Month, which starts off in October. So Ms. Cassandra is here to give an overview of that momentarily. But in terms of the subject area of social development itself, we have, as mentioned and reported in the Public Accounts Committee hearing of last week, devised and constructed a advisory committee that is made up of myself as a minister, Parliamentary Secretary, Ms. Heather Bodden, senior civil servants, and also private sector individuals from different complements to put those reports and those decades of proposed reforms into action. We're very keen to not have an advisory committee that produces in 6 to 8 months another report which doesn't really go anywhere. The answers are already on a shelf. The answers just need to be given focus, appropriate budget to actually move forward. And Ms. Heather and I thought that in order to help drive the process, it was important that the advisory committee be composed at political level, myself as chair, Ms. Heather as a deputy, civil service, and then also private sector. And what we want to do is identify particular issues and create subcommittees and hold those subcommittees to a timeline as they implement, and then the advisory committee will measure the implementation, see what's working, see what's not working. As a small example to give an illustration to the public, we're seeking to repeal the Poor Persons Relief Law, which, as you know, you've known me for quite some time, I've always found that title in this day and age, not at the time it was probably passed, but in this day and age, to not be fit for purpose, not an apt description of what we're trying to achieve. Is to convert that into a modern financial assistance piece of legislation that mandates and requires, in exchange for benefits for those who are able-bodied, both in mind and physically, to be able to work and have an expanded definition of work, whether that's actually employed labor or community service, in exchange for the benefit, so that we are then transforming individuals to be the best version of themselves and contribute to the society at large. That's one of the smaller action items, even though it's probably, Stacey probably look at me and says it's big and it could be transformative. But the point is that's the way in which we want to divide our work. Identify an issue, appoint a subcommittee, do extensive consultation, not just with the beneficiaries and the clients of, say, in this case, the needs assessment unit, but also others that are impacted, landlords, nonprofit organizations that also assist. So by the time that we bring forward the legislation for passage, it should have been made with informed decisions, and when it lands, hopefully is fit for purpose. So that's a small action item. There are other items that we're looking at in terms of DCFS legislation that needs to be updated, and also the streamlining of certain services in terms of Cineco, which I'll come on to for a minute. But that is to give you a overview of how we plan to strategically approach this area and actually begin with a data-driven process where we categorize the clientele between children, adults, and older persons. There will be overlaps between those groups, but we really need to mine the data that these departments already have to make these decisions and then decide what is the appropriate level of assistance. Are the amounts that are currently set and distributed enough in Cayman's day and age? They were set quite a long time ago. In 2021, in the current economic climate, are they correct? But we don't want to have a process where we just pick a number out of the air because it's a bit more. Does it actually work? Does it provide sustainable assistance? So I'll pause there.
No, thank you. And I certainly, with deference to our civil service, and through your minister, invite our civil servants present to share some input, because I think, and I say this with an apology, and anyone has an issue, they can take it up with my boss, me. I love the civil service. I'm honored and have great pride in the intellect, the aptitude, the level of commitment that our civil servants have to the society. And if anytime I do anything that seems to run afoul of that, to lower that standard, I will hold myself in check. I have the greatest respect for what we as civil servants do in our society. I recall, and I wrote down to ask you about, the sort of the poor relief legislation on the last hat when you were here way back when, referencing that. And it's a term that has outlive its usefulness. But then as we get into that discussion, and you talk about management by objectives almost, understanding where we're going, how does this thing impact this thing in order to get the outcome today, but 10 years from now, 50 years from now. Whether Ms. Stacey or Ms. Cassandra, as we get into it in the second part, but a lot of policy work to be done, and as the Honourable Minister shared, not just another report that's going to be shelved sometime for another report to replace it, but action and implementation. But we need to get somewhere in order to have something productive, in order to have constructive discussion. Share with us as you wish, because this is exciting for me. I mean, investment, innovation, social development is what drives the society.
Absolutely. I think that there's a really unique synergy with placing these subject matters together. It's the first time, potentially ever, if not in a very long time, that they have been grouped. And one of the benefits is it brings a multidisciplinary school of thought. You have innovation, which are, engineers and technical experts looking at problems. You've got investment, who are your business experts and those people who are really great at attracting business opportunities and promoting the Cayman Islands, looking at it with their hat on. And then you've got the social development part of it, which are the feet on the ground, those interacting with the members of society who are getting the assistance that they need. So it adds a really unique complement of viewpoints and educational backgrounds, as well as expertise and experience to look at these problems in a new way. And it allows us to design policy with a more futuristic viewpoint. One of the things that we have experienced while reading over the reports are they're very much in the now, which is helpful. It's a really great, picture of what was happening in that year, but it's not always doing forecasting. And when you're implementing a policy or updating regulation, you really want to be thinking, okay, how does this impact 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now? Because part of efficiency is designing something that needs the least amount of upkeep. Now, we're not saying we don't do upkeep. We absolutely do upkeep when required. But if you've got something that's designed in a way that's future-proofed, that's hours that could be deployed elsewhere, as opposed to, revising something that has fallen out of date. One of the things that we're using a lot right now is a waterfall project management. For those that aren't familiar, my mistake. Agile. Waterfall is another type of project management, but agile. Where you are delivering pieces as they're ready. So you've got, part A, you deliver that, and then you add part B and you add part C. Which gets results out faster while also leaving time and capacity for that continuous improvement to get it to the final marker. An example of that is the recent update to the NAU website. So those who haven't had a chance to check it out, I definitely encourage you to take a look. It has been beautifully redesigned, all in line with the Cayman Islands government branding policy, and it's customer first. It's the first thing it will ask you when you're on there is, do you need assistance? There is a chat bot in there. There is a page specific to the seafarers and veterans, and it's just designed in a way of how can we get information to those looking for it as fast as possible. And that was all implemented through Agile. We first did the facelift, and then we added, fillable forms, and then from there we added and kept building on information. So at the end of the day, you've got this all-encompassing product, which is designed to make it easier for those that need assistance to go and get that information.
And if I could chime in there, it's a great point that Stacey has made. To sort of amplify it slightly, is this was in a period of what she described of 90 days. And it showed with dedication and with focus how much can be achieved. Now, from our standpoint, we're not going to rest on our laurels and just think that the update to the website is it. It's a phased approach. But what was heartwarming was to see the e-government unit, and he'll probably come on with me in another couple of weeks to talk about innovation, but to see him buy into the process and look and think, wow, is this the manner in which the Needs Assessment Unit has been operating for years? There's so many little small innovations I could make to make the website better. So Stacy alluded to it, to be able to have fillable PDF forms that can be downloaded right from the website.
Mm-hmm.
We know there's such a large stakeholder group within the NEU clientele operate via smartphones. He allowed and put in the software for the website to be used on tablets and phones much more easy, in an easier fashion. So just within 90 days, he was able to identify small innovations. Because a lot of times when we discuss innovation, it might sometimes people think it's these large sort of projects that might take ages. But sometimes it's the smaller thing that makes the client's life a bit easier.
We think about the end user. And as you were referencing, I mean, I'm thinking about the NALC report way back when in terms of, where is that and what is that looking like now if it was revisited. But you reference future-proof, or old people talk about making provision. It's one and the same, as you think about today, where will we be in 5 and 50 years down the road? But as you shared this whole idea, Honourable Minister, perhaps through you, we can see under this ministry issues like education and immigration coming into play. When you're talking about, innovation or investment or social development, there's an easier crossover amongst the ministries, not just the partnerships, but the skill sets that are required and the collaboration across all borders.
There's a couple of live examples that would provide some color and some illustration to the point you just made. So, for example, described when we were on For the Record on Monday, that another project that we're looking at is the delivery of Cynico coverage for those who are financially deemed under the legislation indigent. At the moment, the client has to apply at NEU. NEU then takes the application and does a financial assessment, then passes it over to HSA because then they have to conduct a medical assessment. Then it comes back to NEU, which then packages it and sends it over to DCFS, because under the Health Insurance Act, the person who deems someone in that category is the minister with responsibility for social services under or following the consultation of the head of the department. Now, every time Ms. Palinda and I, who's the head of the department, review and sign off on these cases, it always begs the question, well, why would it be us? Because we really don't have any medical training to assess whether or not the treatment should be 6 months or 9 months. There's a much more streamlined approach that we can have with just a small tweak to the legislation and provide a one-stop shop for the client to be able to apply at the hospital, be medically assessed at the hospital and approved at the hospital, even if NEU then shares how they do their financial assessment. All of that would deliver a more efficient service, a more timely service, and does not allow the client to have to run around town.
And that's where I see the overlap, and hopefully the approach would bring us as not just a civil service, but as a wider community, appreciating that cost isn't just money expended, it's money lost, but it's time. And the opportunity cost that oftentimes is ignored. My accountant friends wouldn't like that, but anyway, we'll leave that for now.
You'd be speaking to her father.
So I looked at her, right? No, but this is where I think, I share your enthusiasm, Ms. Stacey, and what this innovation would look like for our future society as our children take up the mantle. At some point, and if we do it now before the break, and certainly after, we'll come back and talk about October being celebrating for our elderly and some of the things on the calendar. But if it's timely, either a brief overview of the different subject areas, the units, the sections, the departments that fall within this new ministry, and a reference as to where we can go and see it. I've tried to look at the new org chart. It wasn't big enough. My papers were too small. I need to get a bigger sheet. But if that may help people, because I don't think they appreciate the complexity and the reach of some of the different sections. We alluded to NAU and DCFS, e-government, but there's a lot.
There is. So I did this at a recent constituency meeting that I held, because I do find a number of times, I keep it on bookmarked as favorites on my phone, the government org chart, because it's useful to know exactly where things stand, particularly if you need assistance in an area. So for social development, there's the Needs Assessment Unit, there's Department of Children and Family Services, and one that's quite often forgotten is the Sunrise Adult Training Center, which we'd love to see some vast improvements in terms of its location, for one thing, to have it transformed to a modern, multi-purpose facility in the future. That will take a number of years to develop, but we need to get started because the current layout is just not fit for purpose. And if we're not able as a society to better care for differently abled individuals who, in my opinion, from interacting with them, have enormous potential, but we as a country have to invest in developing that potential. And you will see that they will, and already are, but they actually maximize their human capital to deliver to society. Under innovation, there is the e-government unit, there is the computer services department, and there's the cyber security unit. And under investment, we have the Center for Business Development, and we have a number of, in planning phase, for a number of overseas offices. So if you follow the links in the chain that I mentioned from the outset, and also in investment, there's a new department called Invest Cayman, which is trying to attract further inward investment. And we want that inward investment to always be mindful of what is the social responsibility and governance model of that investment, so that each potential client in that aspect of that sphere is thinking how they can benefit Cayman, not just the individual business that they plan to bring to Cayman.
More what you contribute and solely what you receive.
Correct.
When we come back from the news break, Ms. Cassandra, we could invite you perhaps to share with us in the month of October. I say people, I struggle with persons. So, you know. And I will never shy away from that. So that can take someone off. Too bad. We're going to pause and take that break, though. When we come back, more talk today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Make your house into a home. Welcome to Brand Source Home Gallery, your source for premium products and a premium experience. We'll design and install your dream kitchen with crafted cabinets, complemented with elegant appliances. We'll fill it with quality houseware and cookware. Custom-designed closet and storage solutions organize and beautify any area. And with the finest bedding, you'll get a perfect night's sleep knowing Brand Source Home Gallery has everything you need to make your house a home.
The Tuesday and Thursday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Cayman Medical Supplies, providing quality pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and consumer products to healthcare providers, retailers, and ultimately the patients at a reasonable rate in a friendly, caring, and timely manner. Cayman Medical Supplies is located at number 93 Smith Road, Windward Center. Telephone 949-6211. Each Tuesday and Thursday from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m.
The Tuesday and Thursday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Optical Outlook. Visit them at their new location in Anderson Square. Telephone 746-2020. Come see the difference with Optical Outlook.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Officials with Customs and Border Control say effective immediately, anyone on a vessel over the age of 16 must provide a vaccination certificate to the CBC officer at the Port Authority and must not be showing any respiratory symptoms or symptoms of the COVID-19 virus in order to travel to Cayman Brac or Little Cayman. CBC says if passengers or crew have not completed a COVID-19 vaccination course 14 days before travel, they will need to provide a negative COVID-19 PCR test no more than 48 hours before departing. This includes anyone on board over the age of 5 years. Documents are to be presented to the CBC office located at the office at the Port Authority on the Georgetown waterfront. Turning to international news, U.S. politicians are once again battling over the funding of the federal government. At the heart of this is a bitter quarrel over lifting the debt ceiling, a limit on the amount the U.S. government can borrow. If Republicans or Democrats don't agree by Thursday night, the U.S. could face a government shutdown. There are also dire warnings of a catastrophic default on the national debt that could reverberate through the U.S. and the global economy. Authorities in Spain's Canary Islands on Wednesday told residents on the western coast of La Palma to seal doors and windows with tape and wet towels to ward off toxic gases spewed by lava by the Cumbre Vieja volcano as it reached the sea. Lava gushing from the volcano for 10 days poured down a cliff into the sea in the Playa Nueva area, the Canary Islands Volcanology Institute confirmed via Twitter. And CNN says it will no longer publish content to Facebook in Australia. The decision comes after the country's highest court ruled that media companies are liable for comments people post under articles on the platform. Earlier this month, the High Court of Australia dismissed an argument brought by 3 major Australian news organizations that they could not be held responsible for comments people post on their Facebook news pages. The news outlets had appealed a lower court ruling. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
At times, the path to recovery from a substance abuse may be unclear. At times, the path may be rocky. At times, the paths may be wandering. But laying a strong foundation with the support of others makes all the difference. Recovery is for everyone, every person, every family, every community. Call the Department of Counseling Services, Caribbean Haven Residential Center at 947-9992 for information on treatment.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks to the Honourable Minister for Investment, Innovation and Social Development, Mr. Andre Ebanks, together with two, if I might say, sir, through you, two stalwart civil servants that epitomize the element of public service, the Senior Policy Advisor in the Ministry, Ms. Stacey. I have always, I told you, Sis Burma, how would I say it? Cybersma. You know what? I never said it 30 years ago when I met your dad. I won't try to say it today. And Ms. Cassandra, the only thing I think, if I would call you Ebanks, would be much better. But Ms. Cassandra Farron from the Department of Children and Family Services.
You could pronounce my dad's name, though, right?
Oh, quite easily. That wouldn't be terribly bad. I can even spell it too.
You can spell it? Okay.
Yeah, there's no U in it, and don't forget the E. No, I joke sometimes and tell people, even Adam and Eve were Ebankses. Check it out, man. They were all on accord.
I'll take your word for it.
Life is good if we laugh more. But as October rolls in, Ms. Cassandra, we have an opportunity to show great deference to the stalwarts in our society, those for whom not only sacrifices came naturally and willingly, and they were socially conscious, but for many to this time, they still continue when presumably, whether through legislation or other choice, they've opted to say, quote-unquote, retire. They're still very actively engaged, so glad to know we can dedicate a whole month to them.
Yes, Sterling, and that's one of the aims of Older Persons Month, to actually still recognize that we have older persons in the community who are still contributing to society today, and so we have to be able to recognize them. But if I could share a little bit first about the work that we do at Children and Family Services in regards to older persons. So I can give a little context to it before we get into older persons. So I work with the Elderly Services team, which is a dedicated social work team, providing social work services to older persons and their families. And we respond and investigate any reports of elder abuse, all types of elder abuse, the physical, emotional, verbal, and financial abuse, as well as neglect and self-neglect cases. We also provide casework services, provision of counseling, information and resources available to older persons and their families, and then helping them to understand better the aging process and the changing lifestyles, helping them to access care if they want to be able to age at home, or helping them to be able to access residential care if there's a need for that. And then also helping them to do what we call advanced care planning. So that is when the older person is no longer able to make decisions on their own, that there would be somebody there to administrate care, or if there needs to be a power of attorney. So it really is preparing the older person with their family to do what we call an advanced care plan. And that's quite a big area, because we get a lot of the cases dealing with there's nobody to administrate the care of older persons. And we also provide public education to the public on varying social needs, social issues of older persons. And it might be the advanced care planning or how to prevent elder abuse, because we want to be able to provide a preventative side of social work as well, so we can reduce the amount of cases of elder abuse and neglect that we get into us. And then we also do what we call welfare checks. So at times there might be somebody that's referred to us, they might be living alone, and we're asked just to do some checks on them to make sure that they have necessary care or their needs are being met. So we do welfare checks as well. And in regards now to Older Persons Month, well, this is, we've been celebrating this since 1995, Department of Children and Family Services. And we are the agency that always does the planning, facilitation then of Older Persons Month, which is celebrated in all three of the islands. And the aim of the month, like you said, is to recognize the value of older persons that are, in our community and the contributions to community, but also to highlight any social issues or social needs of the older person community, bring an awareness to that. And then just to be able to celebrate with older persons the specific activities that are planned specifically for them throughout the month. Each year as well, we present a topic or a theme for the month. And this year, the theme is Digital Equity for All Ages, and this is also the theme of the United Nations International Day of Older Persons, and that is actually marked on October the 1st. So the planning committee decided that we would adopt the United Nations theme because last year in 2020, basically a lot of us were forced to use technology a lot more. And
you still remember 2020?
That was a long century ago.
It seems like it, but also seems like yesterday. So we had to use technology for working at home, for homeschooling children, but also to help with activities of our daily life, paying bills, telemedicine, connecting with others, shopping, ordering food, and the list goes on. And so what we saw then was that there is a digital divide, that older persons were falling behind in not having access to some of this technology, not having access to internet, not having a smartphone or computer, or not having access to the networking platforms of social media, and then not knowing how to use them. And the term that we use for that is digital literacy, so not having digital literacy. Also last year, because of the restrictions around COVID, the department decided to do some Zoom group activities for older persons. And we partnered with another organization and had these activities where we have group discussions with groups of older persons and do some presentations to them and have some entertainment sessions. But what we saw was that there was a small uptake of them. And it would be because some older persons didn't have this access to technology. What we saw was a lot of family members assisting their older persons. So the family member would set up the Zoom and they would actually be there to kind of facilitate. So we see that there is a need that we need to address. So we thought this theme was timely, that we should address this digital divide and digital equity for all ages.
If I could just chime in
Yes,
there
sir.
for a moment. Our ministry felt ratified by seeing the UN's theme. So this isn't anything that the Cayman Islands came up with. The United Nations has come up with this theme for Older Persons Month, which fits squarely into Ministry of Investment, Innovation, and Social Development. So, for example, as a proof point for the listening audience, the cybersecurity unit is going to seek to do classes with older persons so that we move away from the notion or the presumption that older persons won't be able to handle technology. My father would take great offense to that. He's probably WhatsApping me right now.
He probably take offense to you saying older too.
Older too, right? But at the same time, there's a segment of older persons whose minds are extremely sharp. Constituents that teach me to this day, sit down and give me ideas. So we should not leap to the conclusion that because someone's older, they might not be able to adopt these skills or enhance these skills. Quite the opposite. Many of them are quite capable to become very swift in this technology.
And I'm glad. Sorry, Alexandra.
Yeah, so just continuing also from the social work perspective, then we also see how this digital divide affects older persons because there is a level of social exclusion in this area where they're not, accessing technology and using technology, but also then there's social isolation because they're losing some connectivity to other persons in the community. And because of social isolation, you can cause loneliness, which leads to other effects such as higher risk of health issues because of loneliness. And then we can have also self-neglect, which come right back to the type of reports that we collect. So when we're looking at preventative social work, then we also see that there is definitely a need to be able to try to address this digital divide. And so what we're trying to do in Older Persons Month then is to be able to increase this digital literacy and help older persons to see the benefit of learning this new skill or learning to use technology and how it can help them improve their lives. We've also established some partnerships with the community to be able to do some training for the older persons in regards to digital literacy. So I know Minister spoke just now about the cybersecurity, but we partnered with a technology company and with a charitable organization, and they are going to be doing some training sessions for older persons every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in Older Persons Month. It's going to be held at the OPAC, the Old Persons Active Aging Center. So it's small groups because obviously we're observing the COVID restrictions at this time, but it's also small groups so that they can get the hands-on training that is needed. So they will be actually using their own phones. We're looking at how to use a smartphone and a second topic of how to use social media. So for how to use a smartphone, we'll be looking at things like the messaging apps and also things like video calls, how to set up emails on your phone, and any other questions that they have, in particular how to use their smartphone. And then the social media is we're choosing a couple platforms of the social media so that people can actually sign up for the social media there and be showing how to use it and then how they can stay connected using social media. And I think it's really a need because we can talk about this, but really there needs to be a session, qualified persons, and at times you need the person needs the patience as well to be able to spend the time to show the older person how to use it. We want it to be an enjoyable experience where they can be confident in how to use their social media or how to use their smartphone. So those activities are being planned specifically in older persons, but that is just a start. It is something that we'd like because we see the need for it now, so we want to be able to do more. Now, in the past, we partnered with the public library to do computer training for older persons. That is something we can still continue to do. Right now, because of the restrictions, it's not being done, but it's something that we will continue to do. And we'll use these classes as well to be able to collect information to see what else is needed, what else older persons are looking for, and then we can expand those type of sessions that are put available to them. And I just want to add as well that, when we have programming for all three islands, the activities that we plan are centered around the theme, but there are also specific activities relating to the dynamic of the particular districts. So in Older Persons Month, because of the restrictions, we have planned smaller activities in each district, and we've done them in collaboration with some of the community groups. So they've said what the activities they want to do, and there'll be at least one planned activity in each district. In Cayman Brac and Little Cayman will have what we call an intergenerational picnic. So it's small population there, a small amount of children as well. So we want to be able to cater to all of them, and we realize that relationship between children and older persons is a significant relationship. So it's an intergenerational picnic on the Saturday, the 16th of October, and there will be several church services. We always look at spiritual events during Older Persons Month. So there's a church service Little Cayman on the 17th. There's a church service on Cayman Brac on the 24th. And the Grand Cayman church service is actually this weekend, the 3rd of October. And I just want to note that our calendar will be available on the 1st of October. It will be publicized on the DCFS Facebook page. It will be publicized on the gov.ky website on the notice board there. But also we take it into the districts. So this has always been our practice that community development officers take it out into the districts. And persons can also call our department, 949-0290, if they want any other information about Older Persons Month, if they want a calendar as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
I made a commitment to Minister O'Connell Conley that I will attend one of the church services in the BRAC because it's important. It's important that those in the sister islands don't think that the minister was just going to stay in Grand Cayman. And I remember when I used to visit in Older Persons Month when I was a deputy chief officer, you'd see people just light up with excitement that you've come across to actually spend time with them. I just love seeing the reactions of folks.
Yeah. It shows that level of buy-in and commitment, and it's the responsiveness. We have the final break to take, but before we go, Ms. Stacey, if you wish to share anything as we go into the break, or we can invite you for your comments after.
Sure. Just speaking about the synergies and between the new Ministry of Innovation and Social Development and then this UN theme, one of the components that we've had in mind at the ministry level is when we are designing something like the NIU website or the many websites that are scheduled to follow, it's can an older person access this? So we know that there is a level of comfort that needs to be there, the actual hardware itself, whether it's a phone, a tablet, or a computer. But if you design something that isn't user friendly, or maybe the color contrasting isn't strong enough, and someone can't read it, then it doesn't matter if they have the phone in their hand or the tablet in their hand or the comfort to go online. So a big part of the connect and contribute and create is taking into account who are the users, can they see this, are they comfortable clicking the icons and maneuvering around and following those instructions. So it's an interesting spin when you think about giving these services to the older persons, but then also reflecting back on how do corporations, how does government make sure that we're doing our part in our half of this and designing those services.
All right.
And I think that's a great point. And I also think Cassandra made a point that should be repeated. Is these themes in terms of whether it's Child Month, and then now in the case of October, Older Persons Month, it should be a month that kicks off the theme but doesn't end on the 31st of October. That is adopted, that helps to blossom and flourish. So I would really see this as a launch and not just for 1 month.
It's a continued effort. All right, let's pause and take the final break. We'll come back, continue our discussion, and I'm always excited to see innovation. I always appreciate the investment in our people and our commitment. So when we come back, let's continue the discussion. Please stay tuned.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Save every day with FedEx. Get 40% off when you ship using FedEx International Priority and an additional 5% off on your next shipment. Visit us. Visit FedEx.com keyword Caribbean discount to learn more.
You can now register to receive a securely verified digital copy of your COVID-19 vaccination status with QR code through the My HSA patient portal. Sign up is available at all HSA locations and at various sites throughout the community. To register, all you need is your photo ID showing date of birth and a valid email address. Visit hsa.ky and click My HSA patient portal for the sign-up schedule and more information.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And as we close out the discussion, I'm really honored that we had this opportunity to formally welcome the Minister Dwayne Ebanks, the Minister for. I don't think there's perhaps have been a more aptly, named ministry, investment, innovation, social development, so encompassing. So thank you and the stalwarts within the civil service that continue to drive it. Ms. Cassandra Farron over DCFS, and of course the Senior Policy Advisor, Ms. Stacey. Thanks both of you for joining us. We have a lot of work, and as the Honourable Minister just shared, it's a theme that is kicking off, but it's continuing to sort of set the stage for what is going to happen as our, elderly, but equally the wider society appreciates its contribution and how we can connect, we can make great creations as we build bridges. Sort of closing thoughts for you, Ms. Cassandra, as we said, what seems to be, a millennia of good things, forgetting the 1,000 years that was 2020.
Well, Sterling, if I could just add, because there's some things on the calendar that I didn't touch on, but because of the theme, we actually tried to do some stuff virtually as well. So I talked about the small groups and the training and small group activities and the training sessions, but we actually also tried to do some virtual stuff. So we're doing what we call digital trivia. Oh. That will be a new activity this year, and we also have some yoga sessions that will be done in person, but there are some restrictions on attending the gym. So it will also be done by Zoom. It will also be videoed and put on YouTube where persons can access it at any time. So they can be doing the yoga in person, they can do the yoga live via Zoom, or they can do it at any time, that they would like to do it. And I just would like to clarify that the age of an older person, as determined by the Cayman Islands Older Persons Act, is 65 years.
It's like 40 years to get there. Okay. Well, thank you. And we know we have some very active, engaged older people. At age 90, they're more active than some of our 9 years old. Right? Ms. Stacey?
Thank you for having us here today. And just in closing, I just want to once again, appreciate the timeliness of the creation of this new ministry. This is the first time that we've had innovation coupled with investment as well as social development, and that brings three very different schools of thoughts together to look at some of the country's most important issues. And it's just a great opportunity to apply those different subject matter expertise, that different experience, the different viewpoints of the world to look at things that impact every single one of us. We all have older people in our lives. We all have children in our lives. We all have access to technology. Whether we're comfortable using it or not is another matter, but it is there and available. And then, looking at investment, which is bringing in opportunities for Caymanians, opportunities to grow the local economy, which benefits every person on this island. And it's just a wonderful synergy and the perfect timing. It complements the Older Persons Month theme, and it's just energizing to be a part of something that is going to be a driving force for so much positive change in the country.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister.
Really difficult to end after two strong policy minds.
Yes, sir. I left it to you.
With strong closing statements. But I'll leave you with two things. Number one, in terms of presentation and information, we want to make this in regular intervals and come back, and this was more focused on DCFS and social development, but come back and drill into innovation, drill into investment. So I'm going to do another segment because each of those have specific projects that I'm sure the public would be interested to hear about. And lastly, to maybe pick up where Stacey left off, I think in the ministry, we have a sense of hope, and even in the departments, that we are trying to look through the lens in every step that we do. What if I was the end user? What if I was in this position? What would make my life easier or better? And we need to maintain that lens if we're truly going to move the subject area forward, whether it's Sunrise, whether it's Needs Assessment Unit, whether it's DCFS. How would I feel? What would I need if I was in that circumstance? And until you actually put yourself in that person's shoes, it's very difficult for you to be able to enact change that's beneficial to them, rather than whether or not it just makes your own individual job easier.
Well, looking forward to those continued discussions, and certainly appreciate championing in this section the month of October, and if we can use the platform to help to publicize to invite participation, to bring our people closer. Always grateful to do that. So, teacher, you and your colleagues, a wonderful, blessed, and productive afternoon as we go forward. Maybe in my mind, at least one of the best places in the world. Hey, to our listeners, as we close out today's show, Trains, Drops of Jupiter was the song that's slated to play. Now we invite you to come back tomorrow for more talk today after midday news. But as you listen to the song, maybe it'll remind you of some good things. Be blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now that she's back in the